It is knife review time on the Apostle P channel. Stay tuned, guys. This is a special one. The Pohl Force Mic 1 Outdoor coming up. Hi gang, Rob here. It's the evening of 30 October 2013, and yes, it's knife review time, and I think this is a pretty special review. Here's why. Oh, and by the way, this is going to be a long one, I think. One of those feature-length Apostle P knife reviews, so find a comfortable chair, grab your tablet, your iPad, your device, a beverage, bowl of popcorn, and settle in. It's going to be worth it, I promise. We have with us tonight the Pohl Force Mic 1 Outdoor. I think it's a pretty special knife, and my journey with this knife is worth talking about, because it was back in July, I believe, that I stumbled across the first video on YouTube of the Mic 1, and it was put out by my buddy Brian, Knife Guy, and I will annotate a link to his channel and put it in the description too, because he's really in large part responsible for me having this knife. So thank you, Knife Guy. Anyway, his video showcased this knife, and a couple subsequent videos did as well. And at the time he did his video, it wasn't yet available for U.S. consumption. He had a factory demo knife that he had procured from Pohl Force USA, which is the American marketing company that handles Pohl Force, operated by a gentleman named Phil Cookson. And Phil is a great guy, and I've had some email correspondence and several phone conversations with him over these months. And I liked what I saw so much in Knife Guy's videos that I contacted Phil myself and expressed an interest to review this knife. And at the time, in late July, Pohl Force USA was out of demos. The production models had not yet arrived to the United States. And we decided to keep in touch, and when they were available, I told them that I would be much more comfortable anyway, since demos were gone. I'd be much more comfortable being an objective reviewer if I purchased one when they were available. And you know, Phil offered to keep me posted, and when they were available, sell me one direct from Pohl Force USA at a bit of a discount. And gosh, what, 3 or 4 months later, I actually had created an eBay search for the Mic 1, and one of Pohl Force USA's dealers has an eBay store, and I saw one pop up. I immediately emailed Phil and said, hey, if they're available, I want one. And what Phil did in the meantime was take a look at my channel and look at some of my knife reviews, and he got a hold of me and said, hey, yeah, we'd really like to have one in your hands. So we went ahead and did the transaction, and I think I've got, you know, one of the first American Mic 1s that exist in a consumer's hands, and I'm happy to have it. Before I get into the knife too much, I want to tell you a little bit about Pohl Force, the company, and about Dietmar Pohl, the founder and CEO. Pohl Force is a German knife company, and for about 8 years have been selling knives in Europe with great success. Dietmar Pohl has a lot of experience in knife design. Actually worked for Boker in Solingen, Germany for 25 years as a designer. He has sort of gravitated toward fighting knives or tactical knives, and has spent a lot of time in his design career in direct consultation with tactical operators, soldiers, so that he could better design and develop knives that fit their needs. And he's continued that path with his company, Pohl Force. He has chosen, rather than to manufacture knives himself, set up the production infrastructure to do that, to contract with a company that's a favorite of mine, Lionsteel in Maniago, Italy, to produce the Pohl Force product line, including the Mike 1. So that happened about 8 years ago that Pohl Force came into existence, started making knives with Johnny down at Lionsteel. Now, as you know, Lionsteel has their own line of production knives, and several knife companies contract them for manufacture. Fox Knives, Bastinelli Creations, Dendra, maybe most notably Spyderco with the Lion Spy. And if you look across those product lines, you see different lines, different blade shapes, handle shapes, but they all sort of have a common Lionsteel construction. A lot of the same fasteners, etc. Pohl Force, I think, is the most unique company that contracts with Lionsteel, both from a design standpoint and a construction standpoint. Take a close look at the fasteners on this knife. They are pretty much Pohl Force. Well, they're all Pohl Force. No other Lionsteel manufactured knife has them, and we'll get into why they're so cool here in a little bit. But very important to note, this is not a Lionsteel knife with a designer named Dietmar Pohl. This is a Pohl Force Pohl Force designed, Pohl Force spec'd, and Pohl Force inspected knife. Their whole product line is that way. Although they are manufactured, produced in Maniago by Lionsteel, every Pohl Force knife is inspected by their team, and their team is 2 people, Dietmar Pohl and 1 other person. So there are only a couple signatures that are going to show up on their certificate of authenticity, and this card only goes in the package with a knife after it has passed the stringent inspection process of Pohl Force. So yes, Lionsteel is the manufacturer, but the knife is every millimeter a Pohl Force product. And what a cool product it is. Let me tell you, before I start getting into specifics, why this knife struck me so much when I watched Knife Guy's video. Well, first of all, you guys know, if you watch my channel, I love Lionsteel. So when I saw that it was produced by them, I was interested. The next thing that caught me was this lock mechanism. It's a titanium frame lock with some very special radial geometry. And I'll get into why that's so special in a little bit. Actually, there is a Lionsteel knife that has geometry very similar to this in the lock. Their tie spine, which is kind of a gentleman's folder, and the only knife they make that's a folder that doesn't have a reversible clip left to right. So I've always been kind of bummed, because I love the lock geometry in the tie spine, but they don't make anything that has it that's suitable for a left-hander like me. So when I saw this knife with this lock geometry and the facility to move a clip from right-handed to left, I was pretty stoked. I also was stricken with the shape of the knife, the overall shape and the resulting ergonomics. The offset of the blade that keeps the hand up away from the cutting surface. The beautifully done forward choil. Your choice of grips here and here. Look at the the depression for the thumb in that forward grip. Amazing. I thought, boy, that looks just great. Another thing that immediately got my attention was the way the base of the edge was ground in conjunction with that choil. Look at that. The edge starts past the plunge grind. You guys know that's a pet peeve of mine in sharpenability. There are a few companies that get this right. Pohl Force is one. I also just thought this blade shape was amazingly cool. A very graceful and pretty sporty drop point, gorgeous swedge, sharp straight ahead tip, lots of belly. What a great all-purpose knife. I fell in love with it. And doesn't it have some beautiful aesthetics? The 3D machined G10 on one side and titanium on the other. I mean, wow, just cool, I thought. Yeah, I still think it's cool. So, what is this knife intended for? Good question, huh? Well, like almost all of Pohl Force's products, it's designed to be a purpose-built tactical folder. And not just a stabber, not just a slasher, although will serve well in both those capacities. Superb purchase for thrusting, extremely good reverse grip, nice belly for slashing, but also a field knife, I think. Made from some pretty thick stock, kind of wedgy, super solid construction. It's a tactical folder in the best sense of the word, I think. Let's get on to some dimensions, shall we? I don't want to go over too much of the stuff I did in my initial impressions video, but let's rehash the important stuff. Blade length, 3.74 inches. Handle length, 4.92, almost a 1-to-1 blade to handle ratio. Overall length of 8.66 inches. I believe the knife is listed by Pohl Force at 5.7 ounces on my scale. Comes in at a very svelte 5.5 ounces. Blade thickness, pretty thick stock, guys, 5 millimeters, 196 thousandths. Carries that full thickness all the way out to here at the spine, and then tapers to what is a pretty robust tip. Not tiny. The materials used in the knife, of course, on the locking and frame side is 6Al4V titanium alloy. The show side scale, which is integral to the backspacer, is G10. The blade steel is Loman's Nyolox, or their part number SB1. And if you want to know more about that, I did a video about that too the other night on the performance and characteristics of Nyolox, which is pretty interesting. And the suspension system for the knife, don't know if you can see in there, but I bet you can. Yeah, Teflon washers. My opinion about Teflon washers, at least as how they're executed on knives that come out of Lionsteel's Maniago factory, is that they work. They're not flimsy. They don't make for a loose, floppy knife. The ones on the Mic 1, I will say, are thinner than other ones I've seen from Lionsteel, which I think is better when you're using Teflon, because it does compress, so the less of it between the knife blade and the frame, the more solid the knife feels, and this knife feels very solid. Now let's talk about construction a little bit. if you notice, we've got two basically identical what are barrel pivots. On the back of the knife or the tail end, you've got a barrel pivot with a male screw that holds on the pocket clip in either left or right orientation, and then another identical barrel that executes the blade pivot about 3/8 of an inch in diameter inside the knife. So very, very large pivot. Does it remind you of anyone? Yeah, it does me too. It's a lot like a Strider pivot, although it comes apart just a little differently. No proprietary tool needed. I made a little joke in my initial impressions video that a really high-tech tool was the best thing for taking these pivots apart. It's called a penny, and it does very well. And then what else do we have holding this knife together? It actually has 6 points of contact, if I count these right. Yeah. You have the big barrel pivots on either end. Then toward the center of the handle, you've got these the female cups that also act as locating pins. They go all the way through the titanium frame in the G10 with a male screw fastening the knife. And then you have the open stop pin and the closed stop pin, which are also locators. So 6 locating pins, essentially orienting the two halves of the knife together. Which means it really is designed to be user serviced, cleaned, and oiled. And you can take it apart and put it back together as many times as you want, and everything's going to go together in the same place. You might remember, if you watched my first impressions video, that my blade centering before the knife was broken in was a little favoring the lock side, which is good when a knife is new, because generally if it moves at all, it's going to move away from the lock, which is pressing on it when the knife is closed. And as you can see, after a nice break-in, this knife's been opened and closed in the last 5 days hundreds of times. We are dead down the middle, and it's been apart a few times, and it keeps going right back there. Why has it been apart a few times? Well, because I wanted to be able to give you guys a good review. You know, I always take a knife apart when I get it, just to get any assembly crud out. Most places don't use the greatest lubricant in the world, and I just like to make sure everything is ship-shape inside my knife. And I've done a little tweaking. You know, I always think I have a better idea than the people who built the knife, and I've had it apart a couple times just to adjust lock bar tension and kind of playing with lockup and lock stick and trying to make it be how I want it, which I love knives that are made to be taken apart, so you can do that kind of stuff. You know, a knife that sells for a few $100s is generally going to be sold to somebody who's pretty persnickety about knives. So it's very nice to be in one of those people, to be able to get inside of a knife, see what makes it tick, make little adjustments, see how it goes back together, all that stuff. Having said that, there is one caveat I will give you guys. Because the knife is so tight, I mean, everything about this knife is precisely fit. You're going to have some trouble getting these barrel pivots out. Getting the screws loose is not a big deal. So you'll take these male screws out, and that leaves that barrel pivot that comes all the way through both sides of the knife, which is almost a press fit in the titanium. Actually, my back pivot comes in and out pretty easily now. The actual blade pivot at the front of the knife, I got to punch it out. What I do is I back this screw out, just leaving a couple threads in, and I just find something that won't mar the knife, and I, you know, bang it on that screw and raise it up a little bit, and then just stick a punch in there, and again, supporting both sides of the knife, and knock that barrel out. I've talked to Phil about that just a little bit, Phil Cookson at Pohl USA, and he and I both kind of think after a few times of disassembly and reassembly, that'll become easier. I don't doubt that. Okay, what else do we have? Well, we have one Lionsteel characteristic shows up on most of their frame locks, the roto block. Let's talk about this handle a little bit. Again, the ergos on this grip in any way are just superb. With the open and in-use ergonomics are great. Actually, some of the best ergonomics when the knife is in hand being used I've ever seen. A couple areas, though, in opening and closing the knife, that just aren't the best. The knife, of course, is really from a company that has been making knives for European consumption for a few years. In Germany, where these knives are made, it's not legal to carry a folder that can be opened with one hand. So the Mike 1 has a sister knife, the Mike 2, that has no thumb disc. And the thumb disc is, I don't know, I wouldn't call it an afterthought, but it wouldn't have been my chosen way to deploy this blade. Just as I hold the knife and envision how I would open it, your thumb would just ride the curve of that lock bar so nicely if they would move this logo, or maybe put it down here on the main bevel grind and put a thumb stud right there. I mean, it would just be so perfect. You wouldn't even have to look. You're kind of like a Benchmade 710. Your thumb would just ride that curve and bang, out the knife would come. You can't really flick that knife out with a normal motion. You almost have to, you can flick it out, but it's much easier to do in that full range of motion like you would do with a spider hole. You can sort of flick it out like that, though, like that, but it's just a little awkward. Again, that's something else I talked to Phil Cookson about, and they are considering modifying how they do that, maybe adding a wave feature. Don't know if that's what I would do. I think if you look at the profile of this thumb disc, this, it's very hard to see. Let me grab my trusty Sebenza and I will point for you. This area right here, if we just carried that straight along the blade stock flush, came up and made a 90 out to these 2 points on all 4 corners, I think the thumb would be able to grab in this area much better and flick the knife out. I may actually modify my disc to do that. So I don't think we need to throw this baby out with the bathwater, or we could just go to a more of an Emerson style round knurled thumb disc. I think if you put a wave feature on this knife, you lose one of its most attractive features, this one right here. If I've got a wave sticking up off this thumb plate, look, how am I going to do that? So probably not the best idea. So for now, this thumb disc is what we have. And I'm certainly not going to condemn the knife over it. It's not my favorite deployment method, but it's very sure to get to. The knife can be opened quickly. Not the fastest deploying tactical knife on the planet, but it certainly works. And I think there are so many other good qualities about this knife, it's not worth belaboring that point. One other slightly negative, just from my personal preference, would be the thickness of the blade behind the edge. If you guys watched my Nylox video the other night on this blade, you'll know that I would probably prefer a knife that's ground a little thinner behind the edge, that I can put a more acute angle on without it looking funny. That's really set up for cutting performance. That is really not the thrust of this knife, though, from Pohl Force. It really needs to be an all-purpose, very strong blade. And I have plenty of pure slicers in my collection. This doesn't need to be one of them. It is what it is, and it's very, very good at what it is. So just a few minor hits, some things that Pohl Force could do better. And before I leave that, I got to talk about one that's going to be very simple to correct, and I expect that they will. This gear pattern backspacer, as you can see, on the sides of each of those teeth, there is a chamfer. That was not there and is not there as they come from the factory. What I noticed was when I gripped the knife like this to deploy it using the disc, the edge of that gear pattern spacer was digging into the crook of my pinky and actually rubbing it raw. I thought really just to knock those corners off at a 45 would make the knife more comfortable and actually flow with the design of the chamfering on the edges of the handle. You don't lose any purchase in the reverse grip. Your thumb still bites into those gear teeth, but the knife is just more comfortable to deploy. I talked about that with Phil. He's going to relay that to Dietmar, and maybe that'll change. Maybe some guys like it. If they keep it and you get one that has the square corners, if it digs into your hand, just be careful and put a chamfer on them. No big deal. Now, I want to get to the really, really, really good stuff. Let's talk about this lock geometry first. Isn't it different? It is, it is, it is. And let me show you why I love it. And I drew some pictures. So let's put the knife down a minute. You know what? Let's point with the knife. I'm going to show you 4 bad drawings that I did. First one is a picture of standard frame lock geometry. And this would be the cutting edge of the blade. This is the spine of the blade, and this is the handle. So this geometry is pretty common nowadays, and where I really noticed it were on the zero tolerance 550s and 560s, where the base of the lock bar is actually north or toward the spine compared to the axis of the pivot. And a lot of knives are like that. The base of the lock bar being past the center point of the pivot. And this is pretty conventional geometry. Your locking interface happens right here behind the pivot. But look at these 2 arrows I drew. These are radial forces when the knife is under negative force or something's trying to push the blade down. As that knife's trying to rotate, these forces go along these arcs. If you notice, those are not perpendicular to the lock interface. So this surface of the back of the blade tang is actually trying to slide at an angle to the face of the lock, which is not good. It's pushing the lock bar this way, and it's wanting, to some degree, to slide. The tang is wanting to slide up the lock face instead of pushing back into the lock face. You know, in this case, at about a 45-degree angle. Here's the other thing. When you open the knife, the very last point to snap off the edge is right here. This part of the blade will clear the lock bar first, and then this tiny little point out here snaps off. So you're going to get the most wear right in this area, and as the wear happens on the titanium lock bar, it's going to get eaten away, eaten away, eaten away. Which brings us to picture number 2. Eventually, that lock face is going to look like this. The point of engagement is going to change from out here, and it's going to move up over time, and pretty soon it's going to be here. Now look, if you put this blade under negative force, if you're engaging clear up here, it's not even pushing back on the lock bar at all. It's actually sliding directly up the lock bar, so you end up with blade roll, which is different than lock rock. I've seen this a lot on ZT knives. the end of this lock bar gets so curved and mangled, it's contacting way up here, and you can just move the blade up and down, and the blade tang just slides up and down on the lock bar. That does not bode well for a long-term lifespan for a titanium frame lock. But a lot of knives have this geometry. And here's what it looks like when that blade starts to roll, okay? The blade cocks down, and then, you know, it squares up to the lock bar. And here's the gap you get between stop pin and the back of the blade tang. You can just wiggle that thing up and down all day long. The Hinderer designed ZTs do that. They just do. Don't like that they do, but they do. Okay, here's what's different about the geometry on the Mic 1. Here's our stop pin, here's our blade. The radial forces under negative pressure. Look at how that path goes on this arc right here. So where the lock interface is, the force is exactly perpendicular to the interface. And if you notice, the Mic 1 uses a little bit smaller section of lock bar to lock up, and it fully engages from top to bottom. The other neat thing about this, and I kind of drew this wrong, I should be almost in line with the pivot, as you can see. What that also means is when the blade opens and snaps off the end of the lock bar, it does it all the way up and down this locking interface surface. So the wear on the corner of that lock bar is pretty spread out and consistent. Now that full engagement from top to bottom of the lock bar does bring one thing into play, and we'll talk about that just a little bit. You do get some lock stick, and it's not extremely consistent. Like right now, my blade tang and lock bar are really clean, no lube on them at all, and I'm not getting any stick. Just a tiny bit, just the kind you want. But if you get a little oil on there, you open a little funky, sometimes it sticks. Not horribly bad. Let's see if I can make it do it. Well, not bad. And you know, sometimes depending on temperature or how much lube is on there, you're going to get some stick. Never horrible stick. There was a little bit. Just enough to let you know it's there. But it does vary just a little bit. That's the nature of this good geometry. There's a trade-off there. You know, maybe if they carbonized the lock face, that would go away or become more consistent. But I'm really not worried about it because I just love the strength of the lock. I love the geometry. My lockup varies, I would say, between 40 and 50%, and as you would expect, the further it seats, the more stick I generally get. You know, right now we're locking up at about 40-45%. I'm not getting much stick. I'd like the fact that it's not super early. I don't understand why anybody would want their frame lock locking up at 5 or 10%. You know, as you use it, the corner of your lock bar is going to wear. You're going to have, well, you risk the potential of shearing off the corner of your lock bar. You know, how about making everything thick enough that we can engage most of the titanium against the blade tang, still have room for wear, and then you get a long life strong knife. I love that about this knife. How about operation? You know, most knives that come out of Lionsteel's Maniago factory are pretty darn smooth. Those Teflon washers certainly aid in that, and they just put them together right. You know, things are flat and parallel, and they just work well. Let's see how free my blade is. Watch this. Pretty darn free, and I'm going to yank on this really hard. You guys watch. There's no side-to-side play, and there's never going to be up and down play with that lock. I can guarantee. pretty easy to manipulate even for a wrong-handed person. Really, really easy for a right-handed person. Pretty slick. See about the tension of the lock bar against the blade. How does that affect it? That would be better if I wasn't pressing on the lock bar. Closes pretty well. Detent's really good. Watch this. I'm going to gently press this blade down and watch the detent grab it. Nice. I think you can shake it out. I'll try to do this without banging it in my table. Yep. Secure, but able to be shook out if you're in the reverse grip. Okay, let's talk about what this knife competes with and how much it costs, because that's pretty important. You guys have heard me tell you what it is, what it's for, who's designed it to be using it. So, especially when you look at that pivot and you look at that blade stock and look at the construction of the handle, does it remind you of anything? It's not shaped like a piece of Lego, but yeah, this thing's aimed right at the Strider, SNG, and SMF. The Striders are going to start at $400 for an SNG with nothing exotic on it. So it's a competitor. This knife in its outdoor trim, which is the stonewashed blade, there is also a Mike 1 Survival, which is PVD coated black. But the outdoor uncoated blade retails for $360, and the black coated Survival for $390. I can tell you this, Pohl Force USA has been very selective about its dealer network. There are only about 4 or 5. The most notable, I guess, is Blade HQ. I think also Knife Center. And the dealer agreement is pretty simple. You sell these knives for retail. So they're definitely positioning themselves kind of the same way Microtech has. They don't really intend to be a high volume knife maker. They definitely intend to maintain some exclusivity, which is fine. Does the quality of the knife bear the price point? Yeah, I think it does. It just does. I've owned several of these later generation ZTs. Definitely worked on a few. Those are $200 to $250 knives. Even the 560 CBCF is right up in the same price range as this knife. This is just plain built better. The fasteners are better quality. The mechanism is stronger, much stronger. I own a couple of them now, but guys, pivots that are made with ball bearings are not strong. You will never convince me of that. I'm not going to go out and destroy a $200 or $300 knife to prove it, but the physics just don't add up compared to a well-done washer system on a big pivot. Yeah, this knife is definitely much closer in quality to things like Striders, even Hinderers. Let's look at this knife. This Mike 1 is $50 less expensive than a Sebenza. Pretty similar in size. I would say the Sebenza is probably aimed at a little different market than the Mike 1. Definitely may do a little higher finish quality than the Mike. A little more precision in the mechanism. Yeah, nothing's a Sebenza. But I like where this knife is in the marketplace. Is it an everyman's EDC blade at $360? Absolutely not. That's not what it's intended for. Is it pretty exotic? Yeah, it's pretty exotic. Does the steel choice work into that equation? I don't know. This Nylox, I'm kind of getting to know it. It is a low carbon, low chromium, high vanadium knife steel, used a lot by French and Belgian makers. It sort of arrives at its knife blade qualities with some funky chemistry, but it gets there. It is corrosion resistant. Most of that is due to the fact that the carbon content is low enough and it has enough vanadium in it that at only 12.7% of chromium, you still get a lot of corrosion protection. The vanadium creates carbides with the carbon, leaving the chromium to go do its thing in rust protection. And then finally you have the addition of this rather obscure element in the steel called niobium, which gives the steel its name, Niolox. And what it does is it contributes to a very fine grain structure, sort of emulating a powdered metal technology steel, but in a conventionally smelted product. That fine grain structure of the hardened steel combined with the really large vanadium carbides, which gives it its tooth, makes it perform pretty cool. And the niobium also serves to stabilize the hardened structure of the steel. And in performance, what that gives us is excellent toughness or chip resistance as well as great wear resistance. And even at a lower carbon content, easily hardened and tempered to 59 HRC, which is where Pohl Force runs this steel. In use, what you're going to find is that it does take a pretty keen edge, not as keen as D2 perhaps, but close. It holds that edge very well, and as it wears, or as it dulls, you get this really neat working edge where those vanadium carbides seem to get exposed and create a very toothy edge that lasts a long time as the softer material surrounding those carbides wears away. The trade-off for that, all those good qualities, is that it's really hard to sharpen. But once you get the desired edge geometry that you're looking for, it's actually pretty easy to maintain because it does not dull much under use. So touching it up doesn't require much work. All in all, a pretty cool steel. And it's not going to rust on you. I don't know if Toad Sticker's listening. You're going to have to help us with that if you get a hold of one of these knives in the coastal Pacific Northwest. You'll have to let us know how the corrosion protection actually goes on this knife. One last thing I want to talk about is this clip. If you remember from the beginning of the video, one of the reasons I purchased this knife was because it's able to be moved to either the right or left side, and it is. It is a very strong wire clip. Now, it's not an extremely low riding wire clip. Let's fold the knife up. In your pocket, you're going to have about that much of the knife sticking up, which is not much at all, just enough to grab onto. I kind of like the clip. The handle itself is a little hard on the pants. As you can see, where the clip bottoms out against the material of your pants is right on one of the peaks of that Machine G10. And it is a little abrasive, not because it's rough, but just because of the point of contact. Not terribly bad, not bad at all. And it's easy to get in your pocket and it's easy to get out, given the amount of tension that's on it. If you desire, the knife does ship with this, it's sort of like an elastic paracord lanyard threaded through the fastener by the pocket clip. And it's just tied in this overhand knot as it's looped through. I don't think you really need it. I have seen pictures of Pohl Force products, I think primarily fixed blades though, where this lanyard is actually threaded through both fasteners in a loop that kind of goes around the back of your hand to give you security as you're holding onto the knife. I don't know that I would ever use that. But it is available to you. Now before we wrap up, I want to talk about what comes with the knife. Of course, you have the lanyard that comes installed on the blade. You have this beautiful padded, like a Cordura pouch that the knife comes in, beautifully embroidered Pohl Force logo. Double zippers that do have a mechanism for a padlock. When the pouch is unzipped, it does lay flat. It has two pouches. The knife does ship in a little plastic sleeve, and that's how it's tucked away in the pouch when you get it. Also, with your knife will come this really cool Pohl Force Euro Ops Division sticker, and of course your certificate of authenticity. Now, I mentioned in my first impressions video a couple items that Phil included with my package as a reviewer. One is this Velcro patch, sort of a rubberized morale patch that'll go on your EDC bag, or if you want, it can stick on the loop field of your Pohl Force Mic 1 pouch. That will not be included with retail purchased knives. And the other thing that you won't see in your package if you buy one of these from a retailer that you saw in my first video is this little bottle of Pohl Force Extreme Force Weapons Lube. And I kind of joked a little bit in my first video about what this was, or what I speculated that it might be. Let me give you a little quick background on that after talking to Phil in between videos. I said it, kind of looked and smelled like transmission fluid. First of all, this does not come with your knife if you buy one of these retail, but Pohl Force does sell it. I'm not sure if it's going to be marketed through Pohl Force USA, but Phil did want me to have this and use it and kind of give him my thoughts on it. We did talk about my little joke about it maybe being transmission fluid, and here's what he told me. It is a petroleum-based oil with a detergent additive, and it's primarily designed by Pohl Force as a gun oil. Okay, it's petroleum-based. It has a detergent additive, and it's pink. That's all I'm going to say about that. If it is transmission fluid or something very close to transmission fluid, it would probably work great as a knife lubricant because, as some of you know, I have used automatic transmission fluid as a knife lubricant when I was away from my bench for years, and it works just fine. Don't know if that's what it is, but you cannot eat it or drink it, guys. It's not food grade. It's a petroleum oil. Okay. Let's summarize, shall we? Let's get this stuff out of the way and just focus on the knife. We've got a really nice medium to large size folding tactical blade. Extremely strong, slickly operating titanium frame lock mechanism, Teflon washers. Rather obscure, a little bit exotic, but really high performing blade steel. A couple ergonomic areas that are mild detractors from this knife. One would be the deployment method with the thumb disc that's not quite as I would like it. The other one, of course, is the gear pattern backspacer, which I think really needs to have this chamfer on it that's not present from the factory. Those are about the only negatives, except for it's a little bit difficult to disassemble, but I think that'll get better. What's great about this knife is the utility of the blade shape, the aesthetics of the blade, the quality of machining and finish, but the big star, not only the aesthetics of the knife, which are beautiful. I mean, it just looks like it's going 100 miles an hour when it's standing still. But when you get this knife in hand, in the conventional saber grip, in the forward fine work grip, in the hammer grip, or in the reverse grip. There just isn't a hot spot on the knife. When you hold it in your hand, the blade is oriented exactly how you would want it. In all these grips, it's just an extremely well-designed work of art that is strong and functional and should last a really long time. Doesn't look like anything else out there. Can't say that it looks better or worse, but if it wants to compete in the market of that $300 to $400 rather exclusive built like a tank tactical folder, it's done its job. I really, really like this knife. I mean, I really like this knife. So, Dietmar, bravo, well done. And Gianni and the boys down in Maniago, really, really great job executing Dietmar's design. Looks like a really, really good partnership, and I hope it lasts a long time. I really look forward to the expanded and full product line from Pohl Force coming to the United States. Don't think this will be the last of their knives that I own. What a great alternative to a Strider or a Hinderer for a little bit less money. Or a great safe mate to those knives. You know, if you collect hard-use tactical folders and you were kind of wondering what to buy next, you could do a lot worse, guys. That's all we have for today. So grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and my Pohl Force Mic 1 are sharp,